James, I think we may have just gotten the best Trump interview yet. I'm going to say maybe ever. This might be a top 5 Donald Trump interview of his political career, at least. And it wasn't done by a journalist. It was done by the one and only excellent comedian Theo Von. What happened?
Well, Theo Von's had an interesting week. First, he interviewed Bernie Sanders on his podcast, and this week, Donald Trump went on to feature. And what was amazing about this interview, I completely agree, this was a fascinating interview, not because it was any detailed policy discussion, in fact, quite the opposite, but it really did show another side, a sort of softer side to Donald Trump. And there are also some funny bits. I'm going to play you a clip now, and I've never seen Trump so curious as he is with Theo Von's cocaine habits.
So how long have you been off?
I go to recovery meetings. I've been off most recently a little over 2 years.
Do you ever go back on?
Yeah, I've had stints where I go back on
and you don't control it?
It's tough. It goes downhill pretty quick.
No kidding. So you
think it's going to be easy.
You think you're controlling it.
And then you're you're doing go-kart and racing with hookers and stuff. It gets bad.
Elsewhere in that interview, he does remark on Robert F. Kennedy, again, denying that there was any official offer to his campaign, but saying that he's a good person, he liked him, and he even said Bernie Sanders was quite sharp. But the more interesting parts of the interview were when he's discussing the alcoholism of his brother. He's talking about the opioid crisis.
The big problem we have is, fentanyl is probably the biggest. Opioid is bad. Opioid is bad too.
Yeah.
I think that's bad because everyone thinks, in many cases, they think they're going to do away with pain. And literally the time is so short. If you take it for like 2 weeks, you're almost addicted to it. It's incredible.
But all this is part of Trump's whirlwind tour of the podcast circuit, which has included a Spaces interview on X with Elon Musk. He's also spoken with David Sachs and other All-In podcast co-hosts, Logan Paul, and of course, Dr. Phil. This is all part of his bid to heighten his appeal with young voters who he was actually making real inroads with under Biden, but as a result of Harris coming in, he started to slip away from that.
One of the striking parts of the interview is that Trump was really conversational. He wasn't letting Von just ask questions of him. He was treating Von like an interesting person himself and asking Von questions about his drug use, what it's like to be on cocaine, which sounds funny from the man who was frequenting Studio 54 in the 80s and all of the various spaces that Trump was in the 80s. Theo Von treated Donald Trump with dignity and as a person, and that sounds so stupid because it's such a basic thing, but we see so many journalists treat Trump as a caricature and sort of as a persona and almost an avatar instead of an actual human. And I think Theo Von saying, I respect you as a human being of equal dignity, allowed him to plumb the depths of Donald Trump's psyche in ways that nobody else has. And what you see is the reason a lot of people behind the scenes like Donald Trump, the reason why a lot of people who've worked for Donald Trump just as like staff members like Donald Trump, because he's curious, like he's a people person. He can say what he wants about Rosie O'Donnell in public, but up close and personal, he's likable. And I know that's hard for some people to admit, but it's a big part of his power. And you don't get that unless you have the opportunity to see behind the avatar. And I feel like Theo Von really did that.
We saw flashes of that humanity once again in a rally in North Carolina this week when he walked away from his bulletproof protection to assist a woman who'd been some kind of difficulty in the crowd. So again, we are seeing another side to Trump.